Hello, and the warmest welcome to everyone joining me today. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. Before we dive into this truly fascinating topic, I want to take a genuine moment to thank you for your time and to send my very best wishes to you and your loved ones. I truly hope you are feeling happy, healthy, and full of positive energy today. Wherever you are in the world, your presence here is appreciated, and I'm so glad we can learn something new together. Let's get started on a journey into the most complex object in the known universe, which is sitting right inside your head. Have you ever had one of those days where you feel completely mentally drained? Maybe you've been studying for a tough exam, working on a complex problem, or just trying to focus through a long and demanding meeting. At the end of it, you might feel exhausted, even though you've been sitting still all day. You might even joke that your brain is tired. Well, that feeling is more real and more scientific than you might think. Your brain, that 3-pound wrinkly organ protected by your skull, is the most energy-demanding part of your entire body. It is a metabolic superstar, a power-hungry supercomputer that never, ever shuts down. While it only makes up about 2% of your body's total weight, it consumes a staggering 20 to 25% of your body's total energy resources. Just let that sink in for a moment. A single organ, a small fraction of your body, is using up a quarter of all the fuel you take in from food and drink. This energy is not used for moving muscles or digesting food. It is used purely for the act of thinking, feeling, remembering, and simply keeping you alive and conscious. This incredible energy consumption is the hidden cost of being human, and it's what allows us to do everything from solving calculus problems to appreciating a beautiful sunset. So, where does all this energy go? What is your brain doing with this constant, massive influx of power? To understand that, we need to peek inside and look at the brain's basic building blocks. Neurons. Your brain is home to approximately 86 billion of these tiny nerve cells. Each neuron is like a microscopic tree with roots, a trunk, and branches. The branches, called dendrites, receive signals from other neurons. The trunk, called the axon, carries the signal away. And at the end of the axon are tiny terminals that pass the signal on to the next neuron's dendrites. The connection point between them is called a synapse, and this is where the magic of communication happens. But this communication isn't free. It requires an enormous amount of energy. The reason for this is a process that might sound simple, but is incredibly energy intensive, maintaining an electrical gradient across the cell membrane. Think of it like a battery. Neurons work by pumping charged particles, specifically sodium ions and potassium ions, across their outer membrane. They pump sodium out and potassium in, creating a difference in electrical charge between the inside and the outside of the cell. This difference in charge is called the resting membrane potential, and it's like a tiny electrical charge waiting to be released. When a neuron receives a signal strong enough from its neighbors, it triggers an event called an action potential. This is a rapid, wave-like reversal of the electrical charge that shoots down the length of the axon. It's the fundamental unit of communication in your nervous system, the basis of every thought, memory, and command sent to your body. After the action potential fires, the neuron is left in a state of imbalance. The sodium ions are on the wrong side, and the potassium ions are on the wrong side. To fire again, the neuron must reset itself. It does this by using a remarkable little machine called the sodium-potassium pump. This pump, embedded in the neuron's membrane, works tirelessly to pump the sodium ions back out and the potassium ions back in, re-establishing that electrical gradient. This process is called repolarization. And here's the crucial part. This pumping action is an active transport process that requires energy. The energy comes from a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, or ADP, which is the universal currency of energy in all our cells. It is estimated that up to half of all the energy your brain consumes is spent just on powering these sodium-potassium pumps to reset your neurons after they fire. This is happening not just in one neuron, but in billions of them, trillions of times per second, even when you are asleep. Your brain is constantly idling, maintaining this readiness to communicate, and that idling speed has a very high fuel cost. This background activity is what makes up most of the brain's energy use, a vast, humming network of electrical preparation that forms the baseline of your consciousness. But the energy demand doesn't stop there. The communication between neurons at the synapses is another major energy sink. When an electrical signal reaches the end of an axon, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These molecules, with names like glutamate, dopamine, and serotonin, float across the tiny synaptic gap and bind to receptors on the next neuron, influencing whether it will fire its own action potential. Manufacturing, packaging, releasing, and then recycling these neurotransmitters is a complex biochemical process that consumes a significant amount of ADP. Furthermore, the brain is not just neurons. It is also packed with support cells called glial cells, which actually outnumber neurons. These cells, including astrocytes and oligodendrocytes, are essential for maintaining the health and function of the neural network. They provide nutrients to neurons, clean up waste products like used neurotransmitters, and wrap axons in a fatty substance called myelin, which acts like insulation on an electrical wire, allowing signals to travel much faster. All of these supportive functions, from cleanup to insulation, require a constant supply of energy. So, the brain's energy bill is a combination of the direct cost of neuronal firing, the cost of communication between cells, and the cost of the entire support system that keeps the network running smoothly. This immense energy requirement has profound implications for our bodies and our evolution. First, it explains why we need to breathe oxygen and why a constant supply of blood sugar, or glucose, is so critical. Glucose, derived from the carbohydrates we eat, is the primary fuel for the brain. The brain is a glucose hog. It cannot store significant amounts of energy itself, so it relies on a dedicated, non-stop delivery service, your bloodstream. Your body meticulously regulates the amount of glucose in your blood to ensure your brain always has access to its preferred fuel. This is also why you can feel foggy, irritable, and unable to concentrate when you are hungry or have low blood sugar. Your brain is literally running low on fuel. Oxygen is equally crucial because the process of turning glucose into usable ATP through cellular respiration in the mitochondria of brain cells requires oxygen. If blood flow to the brain is interrupted for even a few minutes, the lack of oxygen and glucose can cause irreversible damage because the brain's energy reserves are depleted almost instantly. This high metabolic rate also generates a lot of heat, which is part of the reason your head doesn't feel cold compared to your extremities. Your brain is a very active, warm organ. From an evolutionary perspective, this expensive brain forced us to make trade-offs. The expensive tissue hypothesis suggests that to afford such a costly organ, our ancestors had to reduce the size of another energetically expensive organ, like the gut. The idea is that by switching to a more nutrient-dense diet that included cooked meat and tubers, our digestive systems could become smaller and more efficient, freeing up metabolic resources that could then be allocated to growing a larger, more complex brain. This brain then allowed for better tool use, social cooperation, and problem solving, which in turn led to better food acquisition, creating a feedback loop that drove the rapid expansion of our brains over millions of years. Our big brains are literally built on the energy saved from not needing a giant, fermenting digestive system like that of a gorilla. This energy demand also explains why human babies are so helpless for so long. A huge amount of the energy a baby consumes is directed toward building and wiring its rapidly developing brain, leaving little energy for things like walking or foraging. This long period of dependency is the price we pay for our intelligence. The brain's energy usage also changes depending on what you are doing. While the baseline activity, that constant idling hum, accounts for the majority of its consumption, engaging in specific demanding tasks can cause local spikes in energy use. When you focus intensely on learning a new language, solving a difficult puzzle, or practicing a new physical skill like playing the piano, the neural networks involved in that task fire more frequently. This increased activity requires more ADP to reset those neurons, leading to a higher demand for glucose and oxygen in that specific brain region. Functional MRI scans can detect these tiny changes in blood flow, which delivers the extra fuel, allowing scientists to see which parts of your brain are working hardest. However, it's a common myth that we only use 10% of our brains. This is completely false. Brain scans show that even during simple tasks or rest, virtually all parts of the brain show some level of activity. There is no silent and used 90%. If there were, it would likely have been pruned away by evolution, as maintaining unused neural tissue would be a wasteful drain on precious energy resources. Your entire brain is active and consuming energy all the time. It's just that different regions become more active during specific tasks. This constant, high energy consumption also has a dark side. It makes the brain vulnerable. Because it requires so much fuel and generates so much metabolic waste, it is particularly susceptible to diseases that disrupt energy production or cleanup. In conditions like Alzheimer's disease, researchers see a pattern where neurons in certain areas begin to struggle with energy metabolism, effectively starving and ceasing to function properly. The brain's high metabolic rate also produces reactive oxygen species, which are damaging free radicals that can cause oxidative stress over time, potentially contributing to aging and neurodegeneration. This is why antioxidants in our diet are thought to be important for brain health. They help neutralize these damaging byproducts of our own intense metabolism. Understanding the brain's energy needs is therefore not just a fascinating biological fact, it is a key to understanding our own health, our evolution, and the very nature of our consciousness. It is the energetic engine behind every dream, every emotion, and every thought you will ever have. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible aspect of what makes you you.